Do you think power is about being seen? Think again. Most people imagine power as something loud, visible, and undeniable, like standing in the spotlight with the world clapping at your feet. But those who've truly held power, those who shaped kingdoms or empires from the shadows, they knew better. Among them was Machiavelli. And if he taught one thing through his writings, it's this: real power lies not in what you show the world, but in what you hide. Because when you're in public, you're not just seen. You're studied, not just by people, but by opportunity, by enemies, by fate itself. Every glance you give, every word you say, every flicker of emotion becomes a message. One slip and the illusion shatters. One sign of weakness and the wolves smell blood. The truly powerful aren't yet impressive. They're untouchable. They are precise, controlled, and above all, impeccable. And what destroys that presence faster than anything, it's not failure, it's not even defeat, it's exposure. Subtle, emotional, deeply human behaviors that seem harmless until they corrode your mystique and dissolve your authority. Let's talk about 9 of these behaviors. 9 quiet assassins of influence. Well, 9 truths Machiavelli might never say out loud but would practice religiously. If you want presence, if you want respect, not from the masses but from the powerful, then listen closely. 1. Never complain in public. It might feel relatable. It might even win you sympathy. But sympathy in the world of power is poison. Every time you voice your frustration publicly, you reveal 2 deadly things. First, that you lack control. Second, that you seek emotional relief from others. And that makes you dependent, vulnerable, weak. Machiavelli understood that a person who complains is no longer a threat. They're a burden. Power respects those who can endure suffering without needing a witness. The moment you vocalize your pain to the world, you redefine yourself, not as someone to be feared, not as someone mysterious, but as someone needy. Let them wonder what you're going through. Let your silence be your shield. True power is not just strength, it's restraint. 2. Never reveal your insecurity. Yes, we all have doubts, but there's a reason confidants exist. The public is not your therapist. Your audience is not your support group. The moment you admit, "I'm not good at this," or "I struggle with confidence," you're handing people a script to read you by. And they will, over and over again. Even if what you say isn't true, people begin to believe it because you believe it. Authority is maintained through certainty even when it's difficult. And when you're unsure, that's when posture, stillness, and tone matter most. Let the storm rage inside you. On the outside, you're a fortress. 3. Never boast about your plans. You've seen them, people who can't wait to tell everyone about the next big thing they're launching. Loud, excited, public, and vulnerable. Machiavelli would smile politely and then use that ambition against them. Here's the truth: when you declare your plans too early, you create 2 problems. First, people feel no urgency to support you. They assume you're already on your way. Second, you give rivals a map, a target, a head start to sabotage. Let your results announce themselves. Walk quietly, move strategically. Then when the victory comes, no one saw it coming. And that's when it hits hardest. 4. Never take public sides in petty conflicts. You might think you're being loyal, but in public, loyalty often looks like predictability. And predictability is a weakness. Machiavelli warned, never involve yourself in the quarrels of others unless there is something to gain. When you jump into a dispute out of emotion, you create enemies you didn't need. You reveal values you haven't yet earned the power to defend. And worst of all, you lose neutrality. Neutrality is not cowardice, it's leverage. It allows you to observe, to remember, to maneuver. While others burn their bridges, you're building silent roads to dominance. 5. Never show hunger for attention. There's no greater stench in the world of power than desperation. Whether it's chasing approval, fishing for laughs, or needing validation once they sense you need them, you've already lost. The powerful do not seek the room seeks them. Walk in with composure, with calm indifference. Be polite but not eager. Let them wonder why you're not chasing their attention. Let them chase yours. Because when you don't need to be liked, you become magnetic. And that magnetism is the very foundation of unshakable influence. 6. Never break under pressure, even slightly. Public pressure is never random. It's a test. Sometimes it's loud, a confrontation, an accusation, a challenge. But most times it's subtle, a twitch, a raised eyebrow, a shifting tone. And when people watch you in those moments, they're not just listening, they're measuring. Most people don't fail because they explode. They fail because they leak. A tremble in the voice, a shift in stance, a tightened jaw. These things betray you more than words ever could. Machiavelli believed that a powerful person should be like armor absorbing impact without a single crack. When the fire is hottest, be stillest, not robotic composed. And when they can't rattle you, they begin to orbit you. You become a landmark, not just a person, but a reference point. 7. Never over-explain yourself. This is a trap for the overthinkers. You say something controversial. People react. You panic. You clarify, defend, soften. And in that moment, you lose the frame. Now you're not leading, you're reacting. You're giving them the power to define your meaning. Machiavelli never explained. He redirected. If someone asked him to clarify, he might respond, "Perhaps you misunderstood me, or even better, perhaps you understood me perfectly." Either way, he remained in control. So when you feel the urge to defend yourself publicly, don't. Let your silence speak. Let your ambiguity intimidate. Let them question their own understanding instead. 8. Never reveal bitterness after rejection. Someone left you out, ignored you, chose someone else. The sting is real, and yet expressing that sting publicly, that's self-destruction. Because when you show bitterness, you're revealing that their rejection mattered, that it shook you, and now your image is marked. Machiavelli would call that emotional suicide. Instead, respond with stillness, with indifference. Make it look like they just lost access to you, like your attention is a limited resource, and they just wasted it. The moment they realize you're not chasing them, they begin to chase themselves. 9. Never publicly criticize those more powerful. This one might sting your sense of justice. But Machiavelli wasn't interested in justice, he was interested in survival, in strategy. When you criticize someone above you, you don't hurt them. You expose yourself, you paint a target on your back. Even if you're right, even if the world agrees, you've just made an enemy with more reach, more allies, and more ways to retaliate. Better to outgrow them in silence, outsmart them in the shadows. Let them underestimate you, and by the time they realize their mistake, it's too late. Power is not about performance. It's not about charisma or charm. It's about control. Over yourself first and foremost, because the ones who rise are not the loudest. They're the most composed. The ones who never flinch, who never beg, who never explain. So if you want to wield power not just momentarily but lastingly, learn the art of restraint, of silence, of timing. Let others exhaust themselves in noise. Let them expose their desires, their wounds, their ambitions. You stay still. Let them guess who you are. Let them guess what you're planning, because the less they know, the more they fear. Last time we uncovered the hidden habits that quietly sabotage your authority. Now we shift not from defense but to design, not just avoiding weakness, but constructing silent power. You don't maintain power by proving you deserve it. You preserve it by avoiding what doesn't serve you. And one of the most fatal missteps, publicly calling out someone above you. Even if you're right, even if your intentions are noble, the result is almost always the same. People will label you jealous, insecure, bitter. And worse, those in power will begin to see you not as someone with courage, but as a threat to be dealt with, to be neutralized, to be silenced. Machiavelli would never make the first move in public. He understood timing. He understood patience. He would study the cracks in their armor catalog, every flaw, but he would wait. Wait until it made more sense to lift them up just to let them fall farther. If he ever struck, it wasn't loud. It was surgical, calculated, disguised. If you must criticize, make it strategic. Do it in whispers through others from the shadows. Because power isn't just in speaking the truth. It lies in knowing when the truth becomes useful and when silence speaks louder than facts ever could. Avoiding weakness is only the first step. Now comes the real shift, building influence through precision. Because the world hates a vacuum. When you subtract the noisy behaviors Machiavelli would despise, you don't become invisible, you become undefined. And when you are undefined, people begin to project. They create their own stories about you. And here's the secret, the stories they make up are often far more powerful than the truth. So what do you install in place of those self-defeating instincts? Replace complaints with unreadable endurance. When others whine, they leak desperation. When you endure in silence, you generate mystery. Why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you collapsing under pressure like they expected? What are you hiding? Machiavelli wouldn't show his wounds. He'd turn them into weapons quietly, privately. When the storm hits and you remain unmoved, it terrifies people because they can't measure what they can't see. Are you planning revenge? Do you even feel pain? That's the power of emotional opacity. You don't need to smile. You don't need to perform resilience. You just radiate calm detachment, and suddenly everyone else feels small by comparison. Replace insecurity with strategic ambiguity. Insecurity begs for reassurance. It explains, it overshares, it seeks correction. Ambiguity, it confuses, it delays judgment, it forces people to second guess. You don't say, I'm not sure what I'm doing. You say, I've got something in mind. You don't admit uncertainty, you ask questions that change the subject. You don't pretend to be all-knowing. You act like someone who knows more than they're saying. And once people believe you're playing a longer game, their focus shifts. They stop challenging you and start second-guessing themselves. That's the moment you gain control. Replace boasting with quiet symbols of power. Power loses potency the moment it's announced. True power leaks. The strong don't declare what they've done. They move through the world with time that others must earn. You don't need to tell people you're building something. Let them notice how unavailable you've become. You don't have to say you've won. Let them see your silence in the moments others would be bragging. Power isn't loud. It's delayed. And when people finally recognize it, they realize they were watching a masterclass all along. Replace performative loyalty with private allegiance. The louder someone yells about their loyalty in public, the more likely it is they're performing. Theater, noise, and usually the future liability. Machiavelli never fought for people in the open. He built alliances in back rooms where trust wasn't cheap and silence was sacred. You want someone to trust you. Support them where no one's watching. Want to preserve your advantage. Stay neutral in public, because the one who reveals nothing can never be cornered. Replace attention-seeking with calculated absence. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. In fact, the person who forces themselves into every space, every joke, every moment they're announcing need. Machiavelli understood that rulers don't attract attention, they bend the room around them. So don't try to dominate the spotlight. Step just outside of it. Don't laugh unless your laughter shifts the mood. Don't speak unless silence has created a space only you can fill. Humans chase contrast, and in a room full of noise, the one who holds his tongue becomes the gravitational center. Replace reaction with pre-planned stillness. When tension builds, when accusations come flying, when someone tries to bait you, don't fight the moment. Own it by refusing to match their chaos. Machiavelli would call this preset postures, specific physical responses practiced in advance, the pause before answering, the stare without emotion, the silent lean back after being interrupted. These moves break the rhythm of confrontation because people expect resistance. When they get stillness, their aggression rebounds. And while they spiral, trying to control the tempo, you become the still point in the storm. Replace over-explaining with micro-mystery. The more you say, the more people define you. The less you say, the more they imagine. And when they're projecting onto you, you're not being judged, you're being mythologized. So when someone challenges you, don't defend. Respond with, let's see how it plays out. When questions shrug and say, it made sense to me, they'll lean in, they'll search for meaning, and in that search they give you power. Because Machiavelli never wanted to be understood. He wanted to be interpreted. And often the interpretations we inspire carry more weight than any truth we could explain. Replace bitterness with quiet exit. Rejection stings. Being overlooked hurts, but reacting to it, that's where you lose. Don't fight, don't justify, don't lash out. Withdraw. Coldly, silently, without a word. Not in rage, but in refined detachment. Because the person who removes themselves with dignity without spectacle leaves behind a mystery. And in that silence, discomfort grows. People whisper, did he know something we don't? Did we just lose something important? And by the time they realize your absence was the loudest move in the room, it's too late. So what's next? The world will try to shape you with noise, pressure you to react, explain, chase, prove. But if you master the art of invisible dominance of stillness, ambiguity, and restraint, you'll discover something extraordinary. You don't need to overpower others to rule them. You just need to give them space to reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. Last time we learned that power doesn't chase moments, it shapes them. It doesn't react. It waits. And when it moves, it leaves echoes. Now let's take that further. Because once you've made yourself scarce without chaos, without outbursts, and without explanation, something unexpected happens. People start whispering. Was that intentional? Was it a move? Why does it feel like we just lost something valuable? And that's the point. You didn't disappear in defeat, you vanished with intention. You created a void. And anything that returns after absence comes back with more gravity, more intrigue. If you choose to reappear, you don't just return, you arrive. And the room feels it. Replace raw criticism with delayed precision. Most people strike the second they feel offended. But Machiavellian power doesn't lash out. It waits, it watches, it studies. You don't respond in the heat of the moment. You give it enough time to peel back the layers of your opponent's weakness. And then later, in a completely different setting when no one expects it, you reveal a single truth, specific, sharp, surgical, so well-timed it feels accidental. But it isn't. It's retaliation sculpted by restraint. It's poetic justice built with patience. Machiavelli never pointed and declared, that man is weak. He let that man show it himself, and then when the fall had already begun, he whispered a single phrase into the right ear. And it rippled. Power doesn't shout. It speaks with the weight of silence that finally breaks. Remember, control without perception is wasted. Machiavelli never stayed quiet unless the silence made others paranoid. This is the next stage. You're no longer just managing how people see you when you're present. You're shaping how they speak about you when you're not, because public appearance is only part of the game. True influence is in how your absence lingers. You're not just presenting your character. You're installing your legend. And legends aren't built through grand speeches. They're built through what you let others assume and how you respond when they do. Bend their perception before they can define you. Machiavelli didn't want to be understood. He wanted to be feared, admired, followed with no one exactly sure why. Most people speak to fill silence. The Machiavellian speaks to create it, because power isn't in the words. It's in the gaps between them. When you speak slowly, when you pause just before responding, when your sentence hangs in the air like a question that was never meant to be answered, that's where authority lives. In the tension, in the mystery. People begin to lean in. They listen harder. They assume intelligence where there's hesitation. They assign depth where you've said nothing. Let your silence be punctuation. Let them finish your sentences in their minds. Now you're not just speaking, you're becoming a presence they must decode. Control your eye contact like a scalpel. There are only two ways to defeat someone in public without raising your voice or lifting a finger. Hold their gaze until they break, or refuse to look at them at all. Machiavelli knew this long before psychology gave it a name. Your eyes aren't just about confidence, they are tools of dominance. When someone challenges you, when they mock, provoke, or bait you, hold their eyes. Calmly, no aggression, no blinking. You don't overfocus, you wait, still, until they look away. And the moment they do, the entire room knows who just won. And if the person beneath you tries to provoke you, don't even acknowledge them. Not with arrogance, with cold detachment. That absence of attention turns them invisible. And everyone watching understands your social ranking without you saying a single word. Respond to provocation with calm redirection. The most powerful people in a room are not those who win arguments. They're the ones who never even appear to join them. If someone corners you with sarcasm or throws criticism in public, don't defend, don't react. Pivot, smile barely, redirect the topic with such subtlety, such calm elegance that the aggressor seems juvenile by comparison. And the room will feel it. They'll see you weren't trying to win. You just walk past the fight entirely. That's what real presence looks like. And once people see that you cannot be baited, they stop trying. They start adjusting to you. Your pace becomes the rhythm of the room. Your stillness becomes the emotional thermostat. Build a myth around your absence. Strangely, the most powerful moments of public influence often come when you're no longer in the room. But for that to happen, you must move with purpose. Leave quietly, speak sparingly, give just enough to spark curiosity, and then disappear. Suddenly they're asking, what's he working on now? Did you see how composed he was? I heard he's planning something big. You've planted a myth, a low-frequency legend that moves through rooms even when you don't. To do this, be just slightly less available than expected. Arrive late, leave early, speak briefly but with meaning, never the full picture. Let your name pose conversations. Let it carry a respect and just enough uncertainty to keep people watching the door. Legends don't shout, they echo. Let others defend you publicly. The average person panics when their reputation is questioned. They rush in, explain, defend, justify. Machiavelli never did. Why, bud? Because defending yourself legitimizes the accusation. It makes it real. Instead, he cultivated quiet loyalty. He built alliances behind the scenes. He stayed calm, trusting that his presence, his silence, his reputation had already done the work. You must do the same. Speak in ways that people enjoy quoting. Move in ways that make others feel smart defending you. And when someone questions your character in public, you remain still. Say only they're entitled to their view. Then say nothing. Let the crowd correct the narrative. Let the room defend your name. That's how rulers operate. They don't chase rumors, they let the myth fix them. Master the exit. Machiavelli believed that timing was the invisible hand of perception. Say the right thing at the wrong time and lose everything. Stay too long and taint a perfect impression. So train yourself to leave while the moment is still rising. Exit with curiosity still hanging in the air. Not when you're dismissed, not when you've run out of things to say. Leave before the applause fades. Exit mid-conversation with a line that sounds reasonable but leaves a door open. I've got something to handle. Let's finish this another time. That's a good place to pause for now. Say it calmly, not smug, just intentional. And when you walk away, the room will murmur, not about what you said, but why you left when you did. Now, you're no longer just a presence, you've become a figure they recall when the room is empty. Machiavelli didn't just teach tactics, he created atmosphere. And that's your final shift. You're not here to impress, you're here to disturb certainty, to ignite curiosity, to leave people unable to explain why they remember you, but absolutely unable to forget. Because presence is defense, but power begins the moment you decide to use it. And Machiavelli didn't just want to be respected. He moved through the world like a weapon, not always fired, but always noticed. You've learned to enter rooms with power. Now it's time to learn how to destabilize those rooms without even moving. There's silence that shields you, and then there's silence that lures others into ruin. Use the latter, because silence is not just a barrier, it's a trap. Use silence not to hide, but to bait. When someone tries to provoke you, don't give them your words. Give them your pause, your stare, your stillness. Give them absolutely nothing. And in that vacuum, watch them unravel. They'll over-explain, they'll escalate, they'll keep talking desperately, trying to fill the space you've refused to occupy. And the room will notice who's still and who's spiraling. Machiavelli used silence like a mirror, a test, a scalpel. He let others expose themselves trying to break his calm. The foolish can't sit with silence. The powerful let it consume the unprepared. Redirect questions into questions. When someone tries to corner, you don't answer directly. Never give them what they're looking for. Instead, flip it. If they ask, "Why did you do that?" you say, "Why does that interest you?" If they ask, "What's next for you?" you smirk. "Wouldn't it be smarter if I didn't say?" And just like that, the crowd stops looking for truth in your words and starts searching for it in your intentions. That's how you flip the power dynamic. When you answer, they control the pace. But when they start explaining themselves, you control the moment. Use micro movements to disturb the atmosphere. Most people in public perform. Big gestures, loud voices, fast reactions. But Machiavellian presence is minimalist. It's threat whispered in silence. A glance held just a second too long. A smirk while someone else is trying too hard to prove themselves. A slow sip of your drink right after their fiery speech. No words, just timing. These aren't reactions. They're statements. They say, I understand this moment better than you, and no one can explain why. It feels uncomfortable, but it does. That's dominance without noise, power without performance. Publicly praise the powerful with surgical precision. Never criticize those above you. You know that already. But Machiavelli would go further. He'd offer subtle praise, sharp, specific, undeniable. Not flattery, not fanfare, just truth delivered with elegance. He's always perfectly timed. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, it lands. You can feel when he enters a room even before you see him. Why do this? Because the powerful remember who protects their image. And when you do this right, you become a ghost ally, shielded by their favor, yet never appearing submissive. You're in their circle without announcing your place. Your weapon remains drawn, but unseen. Never reveal who you're truly watching. In public, always appear casually engaged. But in truth, be analyzing. Who's desperate for attention? Who's quietly competing with you? Who's pretending not to notice you? While mirroring your posture, Machiavelli never scanned a room, obviously. He observed without ever letting the room know it was being studied. Because power isn't just about commanding attention, it's about collecting information invisibly. The one who watches everyone is dangerous, but the one who watches without being seen watching that person is unstoppable. See their envy, notice their insecurity, mark the patterns, then wait. You'll know when to move. Respond to disrespect with a vanishing act. Someone interrupts you, undermines you, diminishes you in front of others. Most would respond, fight back, correct the insult, but not you. You withdraw. Your attention, your words, your energy gone. You don't argue. You simply speak to someone else. Change direction. Let them feel what it's like to be cut off from your presence, and they will feel it. Suddenly, they're colder than they expected, so they start trying harder. They overperform, overtalk, overcompensate, and now they've lost control not because you punished them, but because you vanished, and their insecurity does the rest. Drop timed phrases that echo. You don't need to deliver speeches. You need to plant phrases. Short, precise, lethal. A single sentence that replays in their head long after you've left. Machiavelli once said, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. You echo that philosophy through your own language. You'll understand later. Sometimes silence says everything. Power doesn't respond. It observes. You say these things casually in passing, not as declarations, but as rituals, and they stay. People can't explain why they remember it, but they do. It haunts, it echoes, and your presence lives in their minds beyond the conversation. Let public spaces turn you into a walking contradiction. While others try to be defined, you become difficult to label. You walk in with warm eyes but a cold voice. You're friendly but distant, polite but unreadable, present then suddenly withdrawn. One moment engaging, the next, gone. You're never rude, you're just unpredictable. And this confuses people. Their brains can't pin you down. They don't know whether to lean in or pull back, so they fixate. You've become a riddle, a contradiction wrapped in calm, and in that confusion they start watching. Not because they understand you, but because they can't. You've stopped being a person. You've become a force. That's what Machiavelli would build, not just power, but dissonance. Not a man who can be measured, but one who bends clarity itself. And when people can't name you, when they can't predict you, when they can't explain why you make them uneasy, that's when you've won.